Pnet's latest job market trends report is showing that hiring in South Africa has grown by 1% between May and June of this year. Accounting skills remain in high demand along with nursing, vehicle and mobile equipment installers, that along with finance and logistics as an industry. The survey has further detailed the most in-demand job sectors in 3 provinces, being the Western Cape, the Free State and the Northern Cape. Pnet's Byrne discusses this with us. Good evening to you, Paul. It is a bit of a positivity, but do talk us through the highlights of this report, especially because it indicates that 1% month-on-month growth, while the year-on-year reading represents a 9% decrease.
Tumisang, thank you very much. Really good to be with you. Yeah, I think I have put this down as a really positive marker in terms of where we find ourselves at this time of year. 1%, albeit that it doesn't sound like a lot, has to be taken in the context of remembering that we actually are in an election year. And historically, when we've looked at data over previous election cycles, we've always seen that there has been this decline in hiring activity. And that's certainly what we can see when you speak about that year-on-year hiring activity being down 9%. But again, the important point here is that it's in June when we actually, this is where these numbers come from, and this is what we're reporting on in this particular report. We were still very much in the throes of trying to form government, understand where we were going with the government of national unity. So to see that 1% uptick, that has been particularly positive. I also take a lot of positivity from the fact that we're actually seeing the trending jobs coming through in logistics, in finance, in nursing, because I think those are great indicators in terms of sort of the building blocks around which we need to start making sure that we can get people back into work.
Based on that, would it be a fair assessment then to say that the near-term outlook is also quite positive, given that there is optimism around a pickup in the South African economy?
You know, Tumisang, our feeling is, yes, that is the case. It's too early to call at this stage. We've got to look at a little bit more data before we can really get into most of the conviction of saying this is what is going to happen. So I take it a step at a time and saying that this is an early marker. Our expectation is that we will continue to see an increase in the better part of the latter part of this year is going to show some good trends. But at this stage, that's just a theory based on where we think we're going to go based on the resilience of South African business. There's a lot that we still need to get over. Of course, we talk about the election season, but we must not forget that we also are coming off the back of the headwinds in terms of high interest. We still got the high interest, low consumer spending, supply chain congestion, and of course, the historical load shedding. And let's hope we leave that as historical. But those have all had its impact in terms of what has happened, in addition to the election season that I've been speaking about. But I think business has been waiting to get back into doing business, and I think now that we've got the elections out of the way, and again these markers are coming in to suggest that things are improving, I am expecting that we're going to see an uptick towards the end of the year.
Now, given the second quarter figures released by Stats SA recently, the quarterly labour force survey on joblessness, are the professions noted in this report contributing factors they're reflecting where South Africa needs to focus in terms of feeding the labour landscape?
It is. Our information in terms of what it is that we're presenting looks at a slightly different, a slightly different set of numbers to what Stats SA are looking at. They're looking at the industries, we're looking at job sectors. But very definitely there are some correlations in terms of what we can see. And if I get back into the detail of some of the industries that we've looked at in terms of our report for June, when we look at the trending sectors, we've noted 3 in particular that have shown growth in the second quarter of this year. They are architecture and engineering, manufacturing and assembly, and finance. And looking at the detail, architecture and engineering, although they had a low first quarter in terms of hiring activity, are 9% up year on year. Manufacturing and assembly, similar trend in actual fact, low first quarter, second quarter up 6%. And then within finance, we saw a 1% uptick in terms of the year-on-year progress that we've made. So, good to see that those jobs coming through again.
Lastly, do talk us through the gender dynamics that have been picked up by the survey.
Yeah, those are very interesting. And I think, Tumisang, particularly appropriate where we find ourselves right now in Women's Month, we thought it would be very interesting to look at our data to see if there's a trend and change around women applying for previously male-dominated roles. And we've identified 10 different roles in which we can actually see this is happening. And those are as varied as policing and support type roles through to technical and product specialists, equities, bonds, and derivatives managers. And the type of trend that we're seeing, if we go back to just equities, bonds, and derivatives, 3 years ago, which is what we've done the comparison of the data on, there were 47% of applications made by women. Today, that number has increased to 62%. When we're looking at things like technical product or professionals like technical product specialists, that's changed from 32% to 51%. And even within commodities and financial service agents, 41% to 55%. So 41% 3 years ago is the volume of what we were getting from females. Today is 55%. And I think what that's suggesting is that slowly but surely we're starting to see these changes in the gender balance of those roles. And that's important news in terms of where we find ourselves this month.
Very encouraging, and thank you so much for your input. Paul Byrne is with Pnet talking us through that entity's survey that looks at the labor dynamics in South Africa.